Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later, as now it's time for a brand new Toy of the Week video. And unless you've had your head under your pillow for the last month or so, you can't help but have noticed that there's been a new Masterpiece Seeker mold unveiled. In fact, we've only just had brand new product shots released by Takara Tomy, and my word, this thing looks spectacular. I mean, honestly, any doubts I had about the validity of a third Seeker mold have just gone right out of the window since it was unveiled. It's definitely our most cartoon-accurate Starscream toy to date, but also manages to look rather stunning in its own right. It seems to come with a ton of fun accessories and gimmicks too, so it feels like it's going to be a very special release indeed. Can't wait! Of course, such a reveal means two things. Firstly, you just know that there's going to be an endless line of repaints as they pump this guy out in whatever colour scheme they can think of. Hashtag release the Snyder Cut. And before we all start groaning about them milking the mould or whatever, I see you at the back there with your Generations Rainmakers multi-pack under your arm. You ain't fooling me. It's an inevitability of being a Transformers collector that no matter who you are or what line you prefer, you're gonna end up with too many Seekers at some point. Facts. So yes, we'll probably all find ourselves with more versions of this new mold than we care to even imagine, but I feel strangely up for that at this point. I mean, that's at least until they unveil a fourth Seeker design, right? Which brings us nicely to the second point, because there's always something else to grumble about, isn't there? And in this case, it's that they've only gone and done a third version of a character that we've already seen in the Masterpiece line. I mean, come on, Takara. We know that the Seekers are really cool and all, but 3 in a line that will be 18 years old by the time the newest one is released? Oh, that's just too much. I mean, that's an average of 1 every 6 years, and I like to wait at least a full decade before another incredibly engineered new toy of one of the most iconic characters in all of Transformers history is produced. There's only so much fun and enjoyment I expect from this hobby. Thank you very much. Okay, joking aside, I do get it. And to be fair, I was kind of in that mindset myself when the idea of a third Seeker mold was first unveiled a little while back. But having seen the design, it's more than won me over. And besides, have you taken a look at MP-11 recently? I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved it at the time, but this thing has not aged all that well and kind of feels a little outdated now, if anything. So I'm definitely up for a fresh take. Of course, these days, the original design in the line doesn't get all that much love anymore. So today, we're taking a look at where it all began with Masterpiece MP-3 Starscream. Let's take to the skies. MP-3 Starscream was the third figure in Takara Tomy's Masterpiece line and was first released to much excitement back in 2006. This was the first interpretation of the treacherous Decepticon we'd seen in Masterpiece form, and immediately caught the eye of collectors hungry for more after the success of MP-1 Convoy. In his alternate form, it's no exaggeration to say that Starscream features one of the most stunningly realistic vehicle modes on any Transformers toy ever, and brings to life that classic F-15 Eagle mode in superb detail. Every inch of the design looks nothing shy of remarkable, with virtually no robot mode kibble from just about any angle. In fact, so intricate is the attention to detail that the jet mode features numerous real-world cues, including moving panels and flaps that make it feel more like a scale model than anything. There's even an opening cockpit with a molded interior section, into which you can pop an absolutely tiny minifigure recreation of the Dr. Arkville character from the Generation 1 cartoon. The weapons are a bit of a feature here too, with some classic Starscream null rays being accompanied by some optional missiles that can be pegged onto his sides. There's even a small clip that attaches to the underside of the nose cone and can be used to store the small Megatron gun accessory that came with MP-1, recreating a moment from the cartoon. As if that wasn't enough, the package includes a flight stand accessory for displaying the awesome jet form, which has the additional benefit of stowing away the various other accessories rather neatly. Also impressive are the lovingly applied and uber-detailed paint applications all over this thing, which never fail to catch the eye and hold up even under close scrutiny. And if you fancy, The toy is packing a sheet of stickers replete with all kinds of real-world nods and some classic Transformers callbacks, including a reference to Starscream's appearance in Beast Wars. At the time, this level of comprehensive gimmickry proved to be a real showstopper for many collectors, putting MP-3 on the same level as the concurrently running Binaltech line. Of course, the toy was also surprising in other ways, some of which continue to cause comment till this day. Firstly, while still being a sizable toy, it was considerably smaller compared to the previous design of MP-1, landing at the same 1:60 scale as Macross Valkyries. Secondly, whilst the real-world accuracy of this figure design makes for a hugely impressive alternate form, it meant that it ended up with a far more stylized robot mode, as we'll see. And finally, the colour scheme is a clear departure from Starscream's classic grey, red and blue, and caused a lot of comment online when it was first glimpsed, perhaps understandably. It's a weird one, as whilst there are some examples of this darker colour scheme on real-world F-15s, it's not exactly common either. That said, it does make MP-3 stand out as something a bit different in retrospect. Besides, there was a subsequent Hasbro release of the mould in a more traditional colour scheme, and a slightly alternate version of this paint job seen under Japanese release too. Then of course Takara perhaps inevitably gave us repaints in the form of Skywarp and Thundercracker, both of which had their own spin on how their respective colour schemes were interpreted for this design. Oh, and let's not forget the show-stopping MP-3G Ghost Starscream repaint as well. I ain't afraid of no Ghost when they look as good as this. Ultimately though, the original green screen release remains arguably the most unique iteration of all, and looks simply breathtaking in its jet form even after all these years. Of course, that's just half the story, and MP-3 unfurls through what by modern standards is a relatively straightforward transformation process overall. It's funny looking back on this toy now with familiar eyes, but at the time it was intriguing to see how the designers had interpreted this conversion in order to deliver such an accurate jet form. That's not to say there aren't some impressive steps here along the way, far from it. But with the follow-up MP-11 release having copied so much of the engineering on display here, there's a sense of having become all too accustomed to its surprises as the years have worn on. Still, it remains a lot of fun, and gives you an unmistakable robot form as a result. It's clearly quite a stylized take on the character, but there's still no doubting who it's meant to represent, as Starscream stands proudly ready for action in humanoid form. The robot mode also carries over that somewhat divisive colour scheme, but again, it makes for a distinct take on the Decepticon Lieutenant if nothing else. The red on the upper body adds a much needed highlight, and with a splash of blue on the arms and abs and some eye-catching white stripes, he's really rather fetching indeed. Then there's that striking head sculpt, which ably recalls to mind the presence of the character as we recognise him from various forms of Transformers fiction, all melded into one potent cocktail. Should you prefer, then there's an alternate expression gimmick too, where you flip the face round to reveal a signature Starscream smirk, the cheeky devil. That's not the end of the gimmick's mind, as you can flip up the panels on his chest to reveal several racks of moulded missiles ready to fire, in another clear nod to the cartoon. Overall, it may be quite stylized in many regards, but this take on the Seeker mold proves to be a serious amount of fun too, and looks nothing shy of incredible on display. However, one of the main divisive elements of this toy is surely the rear fins positioned on his hips, which is presumably intended to resemble sheathed swords of some kind. It's a strange look, no doubt, and it's the biggest compromise you'll find in this form in order to deliver the incredible accuracy of the jet mode. Should you prefer, then these sections can simply be popped off at the ball joint, which also gives the much needed benefit of creating additional range for the hip articulation. It's by no means a perfect solution, but it leaves a surprisingly clean robot form if indeed you can get on board with the idea of the parts forming. Interestingly, when Takara unveiled prototype pics of MP-3, it was also revealed that they'd originally designed it with a much more traditional appearance in mind, with no hip kibble at all. In fact, that first attempt had been overhauled by famed toy designer Shoji Kawamori, having created the VF-1 Valkyrie design for anime series Macross, as well as working on the original Diaclone line. His reconfiguration of the MP-3 prototype is ultimately what gave it such real-world trappings in jet form, as he wanted to eliminate as much of the robot kibble as possible. It's a choice that has certainly caused a lot of comment over the years, as many collectors still cannot get used to the idea of those hip scabbards, which is a real shame given every other strength of this design. Objectively though, there's no reason to think back on MP-3 as having been anything other than a smash success, which paved a new era for Masterpiece toys and continues to set the Seeker template even today. So the other thing that always amazes me about the original Seeker design is thinking back to when it was first released in 2006. As by that point the Masterpiece line was already 3 years old, but this was only ever the second new mould that it gave us. I mean, that's just how things were back then. We didn't get a third mould until 2007 with Megatron, and then they came out about every 2 years or so, with a fourth one being Grimlock in 2009, and then a fifth with Rodimus Prime in 2011. So I guess it just makes me chuckle to remember that whenever I see people getting a little impatient for new releases, and especially when they're hankering after the likes of like a Masterpiece Double Dealer or whatever else. Like, we've actually got it pretty good, okay? And I think that it's just worth remembering that sometimes, because at the end of the day, all of this entire hobby, it's just one massive indulgence really, isn't it? So why not just relax a little and embrace it for what it is? Third Seeker mold? Bring it on, I say. In any case, the new MP-52 Starscream is up for pre-order at TFSource now. So I'll go ahead and put a link to their listing in today's video description in case you're desperately seeking something just like this. And that's it for today, so a big thank you for watching, and don't forget to drop me a like if you enjoyed the video. Quick final shout out to all my Patreon supporters as well. Otherwise that's it from me, so enjoy the rest of your day. TTFN.